Well, I hope it's on. I don't know.
There's a wonderful Chinese proverb that says, when the winds of change blow, some people will put up a wall while others will build a windmill. This entire month we are looking at building windmills when the winds of change blow, realizing that they are blowing a lot. Right now, there's lots of change going on, but there's always been change going on. Change is formed, but it's change. It's always change. And that they will continue to blow as we move towards this leap in evolutionary consciousness that we're all going through right now. You see everything changing and shifting. We don't know exactly when this leap will fully occur, although I do believe that it is occurring right now. We're in the midst of it. We see things falling apart to rebuild. Things fall apart so that we can rebuild. We know out of chaos comes clarity. So things must fall apart before they can rebuild, and what I believe will be a huge part of our conscious evolution. Neil Donald Walsh, in his book, When Everything Changes, Change Everything, writes, that's what we're basing this month on, he suggests that the shift has been happening for a few years now. Some thought, I remember this, some thought that it would happen on December 12th, 2012. You remember that? That was the end of the world. The calendars were ending. The Mayan calendar was ending. And a lot of people thought that would be the end of human evolution, but it's not. A dramatic end did not occur on planet Earth, nor a dramatic shift in consciousness, except some of us did go through a big shift. For me personally, in 2012, I went through a huge shift. That's when I left my relationship, my marriage of 40 years, because there was something pulling me out into a higher level of consciousness. It was pulling me out, and a lot of people have found all kinds of changes and shifts that have been going on. I was preparing for a shift in consciousness. I actually knew it at the time also, because I knew that we must let go of the old if it no longer serves. If it's no longer of service to you, there's no way the new can come in when we are clinging and staying in the old. Unless the old is really good, then we stay. I remember at an Anton conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and this was in April of 2012, we had the son of Don Miguel Ruiz for Agreement guy, and it was Don Jose Ruiz. And in his opinion, he said this: the end of the Mayan calendar is the end of superstition, the end of giving our power away, and the beginning of taking responsibility for our own experiences, the beginning of finding our internal source and resources. He was really great. We do know that in this process of up-leveling or taking a revolution around the upward spiral of evolution in consciousness, because that's what we're doing, we're spiraling upwards. The universe always spirals upwards, so we are spiraling upwards. We truly are. But today we're going to look at a couple of ways which we can more fully flow with change when everything changes. As a brief reminder, 2 Sundays ago, we looked at the concept of changing our emotions, about change, by changing our thinking, realizing that we really cannot change our emotions. We can't change our emotions, but we can change our thinking, because the thought comes first and then the emotion follows. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but it is. We're going to get into that. This morning, we're going to add some tools of choosing to change our choice of inner truths, and that's small letters, inner truths, our beliefs, and choosing to change our idea about change. And we're also going to learn what are we going to learn? We're going to learn to change our idea about change itself, right then and there. These are all to add to our spiritual toolkit so we can use when things don't seem to be flowing the way we think they should flow. So the first one is choose to change the choice of inner truth. Now when I say inner truth, I'm not talking about our divine truth. I'm talking about our belief system. We believe it's true because it's coming from within us. To begin to explore the idea of changing our choice of inner truths, let's back up a bit to the last time that I spoke. As we already said, our thoughts create our emotions. But because it happens, those emotions happen in a nanosecond, in less than a heartbeat. It feels as if, and it really does, the emotions came first. That's what it feels like. That's how quick it happens. Since this happens so darn fast, so lightning fast, it can really be important for us to understand what generates the thought that creates the emotion. It's always going to be a thought first. Subconscious thought is still a thought, and it acts, like I said, in a nanosecond. What might be there? What might be that trigger then? Where does that thought come from in the first place? Stay with me as we unravel something right now. Walsh suggests that the thought comes from what he calls, this is what he's calling it, our inner truth. Not what we might term our spiritual truth, but rather what we choose to believe about ourselves and our world. And where does all this prior data come from? Well, it can emerge from things that we have learned since birth. Many sources have told us, our families, our parents, our friends, our schools, our religions, politics, culture, our education. How about our religion, our religious upbringing? They have taught, and entertainment. Wow, we get a lot through entertainment. All of those things are supplying us with data from a variety of sources, and they're coming at us from the moment we were born, and perhaps even before then. And all of this data rolls around within us, creating our inner truth, our belief system, yeah? Then when a new event occurs, when change occurs, which it always will, by the way, we react. We don't respond, we react. And we're reacting from this place in our subconscious where the data and the beliefs are stored. We store everything in that subconscious. Our memories, our belief system, everything is within us. Walsh writes, we don't experience what's going on outside. We experience what's going on inside about what is going on outside. So the stuff is going on, but where are we experiencing it? We're not experiencing it on the outside. We're experiencing it within ourselves. For example, if your mom and dad might have told you, they could have told you, that all your life you're never going to make anything of yourself. This is just one instance. That you were a mess up, and that you always will be. That data would have created a belief and inner truth within you that you believe is absolute truth. Then when an event of change occurs in your life, such as you get laid off, or your partner leaves you, or you leave them, or you get into some financial trouble, you lose your home, you might lose your job, your reaction to this experience is going to trigger that inner truth. Your thoughts are going to be, yeah, mom and dad were right. I am a screw up. See that? I just messed that up all over again. Everything I do in life, this is what we play. This is just one, for instance. There's many of these tapes playing within us. Those are going to be thoughts, and then the emotion of guilt, shame, and depression follow. instantly follow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Make sure you're on the same page. So we see how that progression occurs. Now here's a metaphysical teaching. What causes the event or the change in the first place? Our inner truth or belief system. Stuff is going to happen. How are we reacting? We don't even respond, we react. And what will then cause the next event? Our inner truth. That's what we believe. That's our belief system is going to trigger every single change in our life. Changes happen, but what are we feeling within? And what adds still more confirming data to our inner truth is the event of a change. I think you get your picture though. It's a cyclical thing. It's a cycle. The thing happens, we respond, then another thing happens, but that's creating, because it's going into the law. We know about the creative process. That's our kind of our symbol with, I tell you this, with the happy people inside. But that's the science of mind symbol, the religious science symbol. The circle, the creative process, because the thought goes into the law and becomes the thing. And so what thoughts are we thinking? And so then we see patterns in our lives. Different patterns maybe, same emotions. So we are creating. And then maybe somewhere, to give you some hope here, there's a lot of hope, where we can get up. We can get up and stop this. And when everything changes, which is Walsh's book, he gets very detailed and a bit complicated about how to do that. In fact, he talks about going down the rabbit hole. So we aren't going to get that into detail of it, but I'm going to go right to the bottom line. I like bottom lines. They always, knock up all the other stuff. Get to the bottom line. The bottom line is that he suggests, and it's consistent with all teachers of higher truth, me included, is realizing that there's a reality going on that is higher than your inner truth, higher than the events and circumstances that you are experiencing. And he calls it a third reality. So bear with me on this, because this is really good. He writes this in his book: paying attention to the third reality can so affect your life that you may never have to endure emotional turmoil again. Sounds good to me. This is where Buddha lived. This is where Christ resided. This is where all the true masters live. This is what he's writing. It was the home of Paramahansa Yogananda. It is the home of the Dalai Lama. The Western masters too, such as Byron Katie, Stephen Levin, Eckhart Tolle. These people all live in that third reality, which is the divine reality. They lived from this third reality with the realization that what we think is going on and what we think about what we think is going on is not really what is going on. I want to say that one again. You like that one?
I'm taking notes.
It is the realization that what we think is going on and what we think about what we think is going on is not really what is going on. So if I've confused you enough, hopefully there will be some clarity. Judge not according to appearances, but judge by righteous judgment, a very wise person once said. Which now leads us to today's first tool. Change your choice of inner truths. In our scenario before, we have a person who was told that he was no good, and he was just a screw-up, which then became his inner truth. He believed it. It became a belief about himself. Now he has an event. Let's say he gets laid off from work, and his inner truth tells him, yep, See, I am a screw up. I can't even hold down a job. This tool, now we got a tool for this. This tool says that while you may have that thought initially, you can choose to change that thought by saying to yourself something like, wait a minute, these thoughts I am having are coming from an inner truth or an old belief that I have accepted from old, worn out data. I don't have to accept that as my inner truth any longer. I can right now, in this moment, change that inner truth. And right then, in that moment, you can start to install not only new thoughts about your inner truth, but you can install this truth. Affirmations, this is why I'm a proponent, and I will always say this, because you need a new belief to replace the old one. Just positive thinking alone will not do it, my friends. We must do the work, and the work is talking to ourselves and bringing in that divine self. And this could be it. This could be it. So this could be a really big one, installing that new belief. Walsh calls it, this one belief, the answer to everything. I have your attention now. All changes for the better. Take that one in. All change is for the better. And in that awareness, we employ the second tool of this morning. Choose to change your idea about change, because it's gonna happen. Is it not? Everything changes. That's the way the universe is. It's in constant motion, movement. And Walsh writes about this. We have been viewing change as a disruption, a break in the flow. Hear this, this is good. A shift in direction, an alteration in our life. But change is not a disruption, but an eruption. It is life erupting into full bloom. Change is not a break in the flow, he says. It is the flow. It's part of the flow. Change is not a shift in direction. It is the direction in which all life moves. Change is not an alteration in the conditions and circumstances of our lives. It is the conditions and circumstances. And that's a big one. That's a big one. But everything about life is changing and is always in the flow. This is divine energy, always creating, always moving, always flowing. These conditions and circumstances are all for the better if we have the right perspective. This change, the layoff, let's say, didn't happen because I'm messed up. It happened so that I could have a freer, more fuller expression of an expanded life. This change, the divorce, didn't happen because I was unlovable or didn't deserve love. It can happen so that I can move on, and we can all take this in. We can move on to a genuine, more fulfilling experience. That's why things happen. Everything happens for a reason. We say that. Do we believe that? Do we practice that? Because I really believe that is really the truth. This just takes it up a step because it's happening for the better. Everything happens for the better. This change, this illness, didn't occur because I am not worthy of anything, not even a healthy body, but rather a wake-up call to shift my internal and perhaps external ways of being so that a vibrant, healthy physical body can be brought forth. Gotta take the action. We gotta change the way it's been. And that belief that, here's one, okay, my body is breaking down, I'm getting really old and decrepit. Everything feels like it's falling apart. That got my attention. As most of you know, I couldn't even stand up straight for many years because of my spine. And I took such good care and opened up to all these alternative ways of being, of So it totally made my whole body healthy, except I was also guided, and I was in extreme pain last June, that it moved me to make appointments with all these neurosurgeons. And I did finally find one I resonated with, because he wasn't going to do a fusion and placing screws, so I wasn't having that. But it was part of the divine plan, and I truly believe that excruciating pain that I went through in June and July that led me to make these appointments, because I was never getting surgery. No, I'm not doing back surgery on me. I mean, who's going to opt for that? Well, I did. And it was so healing. So everything, I believe that pain was so bad because it needed to really prod me into going for the surgery, which helped heal my life. It was a belief. The old belief holding me back. All back surgery is horrific and bad. You'll be crippled for life. It's not true. It's not true, and I refuse to believe it. But this is just an example of changing beliefs and changing our actions around those beliefs. The truth is, life is a self-sustaining system, right? Capital L life. And it sustains itself by adapting, by changing. Thus, every change that occurs is a change for the better. Even if it doesn't look that way, it is that way. So please, if you repeat this after me, all changes for the better.
All changes for the better.
Thank you. I needed that exuberance. Yes! Wake everyone up. Think about something in your life right now that you're going through a change about. And say, all changes for the better.
All changes for the better.
And we might not see it in that moment, but just believing in it makes it so. That's how strong our beliefs and convictions are. That's why we talk about consciousness. That's why we train practitioners and ministers to deepen their consciousness to a higher, elevated state so they can hold that spiritual truth for all of us. Alan Cohen, in his book, A Daily Dose of Sanity, wrote, "Nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything leads to something else." If you haven't noticed that. What appears to be a setback or a loss may simply be one string of events that leads to something entirely more rewarding than the single upsetting event alone. Do not resent events that move you out of your comfort zone, especially when your comfort zone is not all that comfortable. The universe is always responding, this is still Cohen, to your subconscious desires and intentions. Believe that is true. Ask yourself this: how might an unexpected or upsetting change be moving you toward your greater good? I believe that everything is moving us toward our greater good. I truly believe that, and I think a lot of you here do too. And just in that belief, we're changing those inner truths. We're shifting them, but we got to live them. And I know sometimes you'd like to change things, to change them back the way they were, because we thought that was really what we wanted. But it may look like that's what we wanted, and that's what made us happy, because we were familiar and comfortable, but it's not. There is a whole wide world. We're just little consciousnesses here in this universe, this metaverse, this incredible galaxies upon galaxies. So there's so much more. So we're always spiraling upward. And here's the deal. That's not going to make you happy, staying in something that you thought would. It's going backwards. We want to go forward. It's the way the universe operates. It doesn't go backward. It goes forward through creation. If keeping things the way they were that you thought made you happy, nothing would have changed in the first place. You would have stayed in that. You would have stayed in that cycle. And I'm not saying that if someone close to you has died or passed away is a part of your inner truth. No, that is the flow of life. People are born and people leave. It's all part of the cylinder of life. It's all part of the flow that we then learn to adapt. We learn to adapt. That's the truth of dealing with death. It's not that we caused it, but it's, remember, it's our response to it. And how are we adapting with these different situations that we don't particularly like? Walsh writes this: change for the worse is literally impossible within the expression of energy we call life, with that capital L. That's because life itself can fundamentally alter itself in only one direction. The direction that evolution requires, the direction that expansion demands, the direction that keeps it flourishing. Things can only change for the better. Things can only improve, because improvement is the only nature of God. And if we believe we're made out of the nature of God, then that's where I go with this stuff. If I have any doubts and I can't believe it, is this the nature of God? And if it's this the nature of God as I believe it, well then how can it go backwards? How can it then be for the worse? It must be for the better. That's how I reconcile my ego belief with the spiritual reality. That is the only reality that is. And you might say, if all things happen for the better, and this really is true, then what in blazes does God have in mind with this change that I'm going through right now? Because things sure don't feel or look any better. They look a lot worse. And that question will lead us to our next tool that we're going to discuss next week. So we're saving that one for you. If you're interested, you can come back next week to find out. If things get worse, what do I do? It's the teaser. For now, let us simply breathe into the awareness that at any moment we have the right and ability to shift our inner truth. We are powerful. This is why we are powerful creators. We can shift an old belief. We can shift it and we can insert a brand new one. We can. I've done it, and I know many of you have, and it works. And it always works for the better. That is the truth I believe in. The change is happening because it is moving us forward. That change, to paraphrase Walsh, is not a disruption, but an eruption. It is life erupting into the full of bloom and full expression of itself. The change going on in your life right now is not a break in the flow. It never breaks. It's always the flow. We can either go with the flow or fight against it. You get to choose. So my friends, let's go with it. Let us flow with the change and realizing that it is all in some way, somehow, for the good. Because after all, that good is God. And God is all there is, right? And so it is.
So it is.